And we are live, guys. Welcome in. Give us just a second here to add in the Facebook group, get all of our wonderful Mile High Huddle community members in here. Let the stream breathe for a second. We got good green check marks across all platforms. Mile High hello, everybody in Broncos country. Welcome into another episode of Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast. I'm your host, Lance Sanderson, and joining me, as per usual, is my good friend and colleague. He is Mile High Huddle's senior NFL draft analyst, the one and only Erick Trickel. Dude, some big news broke today. Obviously, we've got the training camp schedule for the Denver Broncos has just been released. We're going to dive into that here in just a couple of minutes. Super excited about that. I'm trying to make a trip down to Denver to maybe go and cover that, go hang out with Luke, a couple of different guys in Denver media and have a good time, man. How you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm exhausted. I mean, I've been, working on losing weight, dieting and exercising.
Good for you.
Last few days, had my in-laws down Tuesday, Wednesday, and so they're very active outdoorsy people, so we went out and did some stuff with that, and then I've been helping my parents clean out the garage the last couple days, which as soon as I get done with this, I'm going to eat and go over and help do that. So I'm exhausted, doing a lot of physical work, but the thing is, I feel good. Like, I may be exhausted, I may be sore, but I feel good. I feel a lot better than I have when, I just sat around not doing much. So it's great. I'm excited to be here. As I always am, excited for the Broncos. It was great to see the training schedule because, those that can't get to it, it's always good times to be able to go and watch those practices. And it's going to be what's really good about it for me is all the storylines that come from it, all the work, getting an insight into all these different camp battles that are going on. And so getting some answers about the roster as well.
Yeah, it's actually kind of interesting. So earlier today, I don't know if you guys are following Ryan Edwards or the 850 KOA Colorado Twitter feed. I did an interview with Ryan earlier today talking about Greg Dulcich, the article I dropped earlier. He actually dropped a very interesting nugget about what he's been seeing out there at Broncos mandatory minicamp and OTAs over the last couple of days regarding Andrew Beck. I really want to pick your brain about that here in just a couple of minutes. But today, guys, obviously we're going to break down the training camp schedule and stuff like that. We're also going to do our Dove Valley deep dive into the defensive side of this roster, focus on some players, some young rookie players, maybe some young up and coming guys that potentially have the opportunity to steal a job from a veteran, force a guy off of this roster and potentially build themselves in for another bigger role. But with that, guys, let's get started in here on this. Obviously, first things first, matters of business. Guys, you're watching the Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast. You guys can find us on Twitter by following me at Sanderson MHH, for Erick at Erick Trickel. Also, shout out to Scott Kennedy behind the scenes at Scout Kennedy, running the ones and twos for us. We appreciate him for joining us tonight. Guys at DVDD_pod. We got that finally back up and running again, so you guys can find out what we're doing every single Friday for the Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast. And also, guys, at Mile High Huddle, where you'll find breaking news and analysis regarding your Denver Broncos. Film breakdowns like the Greg Dulcich piece I posted on Monday. I've got Montreal Washington coming after this weekend, so that's going to be a really fun one. Cannot wait to break that down. Opinion articles, anything regarding your Denver Broncos, you're going to find that at Mile High Huddle. Now, Erick, obviously the big news of the day, and which is what we always try to start off with as much as we can here on the Huddle Up podcast, is the Denver Broncos announced their practice dates for 2022 training camp, and they start on Wednesday, July 27th at UC Health Training Center. They run all the way through, I believe it's the August 11th is when they're gonna join with the Dallas Cowboys prior to their preseason game on August 13th. They're going to do some joint practices with the Cowboys and stuff like that. 4 consecutive practice days to start training camp. They'll hold practice on 6 consecutive days from August 1st to August 6th. Another day off on Sundays. So the Broncos are not practicing on Sundays throughout training camp, but then they'll practice another 4 days in a row from August 8th to the 11th. And then they'll join with the Dallas Cowboys prior to their preseason game. And I'm super excited about this. It's like, obviously fans are back in attendance. You can go sit up on the hill, get sunburnt because that's what everybody seems to do. Check out what this new Broncos offense looks like. Get a first look at Russell Wilson, how these wide receivers are starting to come around, the new defense that we have with Bradley Chubb, Randy Gregory coming back from his arthroscopic shoulder surgery. I'm super excited about this. I really want to try to get down, man. What do you think about it?
I think the best thing about it is that there's no quarterback battle. There's no more of those. And I'm totally guilty of this because I jumped into it last year. No more of those daily report cards of which quarterback won the day when it's really meaningless. because training camp practices, yeah, they're a help, but preseason games and what's going on behind the scenes, things that fans and media guys don't see, what's going on in the film room, like that plays such an important role in it. So no more of those useless report cards. It's Russell Wilson that helps take off a lot of the stress and issues that come with training camp. But it's just nice to see. I mean, you get to look at all these other guys that all these other battles that are going on. So who's getting those first team reps early with at right tackle? How often are they splitting those? How's the rotation looking at running back? How's the rotation looking at receiver? Tight end? Who's getting the most reps as tight end number one? Is it Okwuegbunam as everybody's projected, or is it the long shot, for lack of a better way to put it, the rookie Dulcich? And I say long shot because rookie tight ends making an impact right away doesn't happen very often. So it's just, I mean, you get eyes on everything else, and it's just super exciting. And first time in a while, I'm actually excited for a training camp.
Honestly, I'm not necessarily quite that excited about training camp because you don't have the quarterback storyline. Like, and Dale jumping in here. Let's say hello to Dale really fast. Yes, very happy. No quarterback battle. I kind of disagree with that. Obviously, it's great to have the Russell Wilson impact, and you know that that's the guy. I'm super excited about that. Don't get me wrong, but it's easy talking when you're talking about the quarterback battle, who's doing this and stuff like that. So I'm going to go off on the opposite side of that. However, at the same time, I'm still super excited to be able to not focus on that quarterback battle. The one thing I want to talk to you about, like I said, I got the opportunity to talk with Ryan Edwards on Broncos Country Tonight earlier today, talking about the film breakdown I did of Greg Dulcich and everything like that. And I don't think it's necessarily such a long shot with Dulcich potentially being the starter. At the end of my breakdown, I was like, with the talent that he has, the ability that he has to stretch the field vertically and also horizontally, his massive catch radius. And I think that he's quite honestly a little bit better of a blocker as of right now, even though there's some deficiencies there, than Alberto Ecuador. So to me, I think Greg Dulcich could potentially be that if not the starting tight end week one, play a substantial role within this offense, because he really is just a perfect fit for what they want to do, at least from based on the reports we're getting out of OTAs.
Well, I mean, the first few before he got hurt.
Right, yeah. And that's
he got hurt and then he was pulled. And I mean, I'm not saying that he's not going to have a sizable role. I fully expected when I did my profile, and one of the things I said is if he doesn't enter the starter, I still expect him to have a pretty sizable role. I don't expect him to be the top dog, though. That's where I consider him the long shot. And it is simply a fact that he is a rookie at a position that you typically don't really see hit their stride until basically at the end of year 2, beginning of year 3.
Right.
I think he can have a little bit of a quicker transition to it. And here we have Alberto Ecuador, he's hitting year 3. We kind of saw him start to take those steps towards the end of last year. And I mean, for me, Greg Dulcich and Alberto Ecuador are equally bad as blockers. Like, the only difference is Dulcich shows more effort.
Yeah.
But he's behind technique-wise as Okwuegbunam is. So for me, it's just a wash there. Receiving ability, I mean, Okwuegbunam, he's just as much of a mismatch. He can stretch the field just as much. He's got the experience. Granted, it's a new offense. So, I mean, in a way, they're on even ground, but long shot wasn't the best way. It was just simply that the aspect of he's a rookie at a position that takes some extra time.
I don't go ahead. Sorry.
And then with the quarterback battles, I just want to say, Scott kind of put it perfectly. Quarterback battles are fun when you have a winner and not just the best loser. And that's what it's been for the last few years with the Broncos, is the best loser wins the job.
Yeah.
Whoop-de-doo.
Yeah, exactly. It's been that way since the Broncos drafted Paxton Lynch, and they had to try out Trevor Siemian in there, and Siemian ended up winning the competition over Mark Sanchez and Paxton Lynch. Like that, the best loser just so happened to be a guy that started 17 games for the Denver Broncos or 16 games, and even more than that going into the next season. So it is rough when you have a quarterback competition, but at the same time, they're always fun to talk about. At least you can kind of have that. It's easy fodder for sports talk radio guys like us, or sports talk media to go and target that. I want to jump back into that really quickly before we grab this comment from Travis Weber, who always comes in with stars and stuff like that. But I want to jump back into the usage of the offense, and it's particularly Greg Dulcich, because the way that I kind of saw it was, with the Broncos reportedly going into a lot more 12 personnel and stuff like that, they have Erick Tomlinson, who I know is a guy that you really like as a blocker, a guy that you kind of found with the former Ravens connection and stuff like that you have over that way. and also just his ability on the field. But you have an elite level blocker, a guy that's going to come in and essentially be that extra offensive tackle. And you got two guys that have the ability to just run all over the field, just kind of roughshod. Neither one of them are like super like snappy as far as route running is concerned. Like they do a really good job settling down into zones, but their vertical straight line speed is really kind of the best aspect of both of their games. If the Broncos are running 12 personnel, especially here in training camp, I would like to see how this kind of works out. How do you envision utilizing those guys in 12 personnel? Is Tomlinson going to see the field like the majority of the time, or do you think it's going to be mostly Dulcich and Okuegbunam?
Well, I think it depends on down distance and situation. Erick Tomlinson, I mean, listing him as a tight end, I mean, yeah, he's a tight end, but he's your hybrid. He's your fullback when you use a fullback. He's what Andrew Beck has been the last 2 years. Mm-hmm. He's an upgrade over Andrew Beck and what Andrew Beck has brought over the last 2 years. And significantly, not just on offense, on special teams as well, and for not much more. So, I mean, when you're looking at 12 personnel, in most situations, or in passing situations, then you're going to see a combination of, I think, Eric Sobert, I think he makes the roster, Alberto Ecuador, and Greg Dulcich. Mostly Ecuador and Dulcich will be your main two. And then from there, you can get a little bit creative with how you have your looks. And in running situations, that's a time where I think that you could see Eric Sobert and Eric Tomlinson line up as your more traditional inline tight ends in obvious running downs or running situations. So, I mean, the good thing with the tight end room, with adding Greg Dulcich, with re-signing Eric Sobert, they have a good group of well-rounded skill sets that they could mix in and out. Obviously, you're not going to trust Alberto Ecuador or Greg Dulcich right away to be that lead blocker, but they both can be there and be the blocker on the cut side. So they have their options open for them with the projected tight end room that I have.
And that's a good point. And I kind of forget that Eric Sobert is still on this roster. I mean, obviously a late signing coming back in. We all know Andrew Beck is that guy that's kind of been that H-back, that fullback kind of inline tight end when they need him to be. He's also been a quality special teams player for this Broncos roster, at least in my opinion.
I mean, you can go back and you can look and watch a lot of the big returns. Andrew Beck's to blame. I made this point often last year. I remember one of the big ones that they allowed back. He's playing contain in the gap that he just cuts it completely inside and leaves his thing right open. And that's right where the runner takes. And there was no reason for it. And there was a game afterwards where Tom McMahon actually called him out for it too, which was kind of funny because, Tom McMahon sucked, but when he's calling out a player for a bad play, that speaks loudly.
That's a fair point. I'll digress to you on that one. But regardless, Andrew Beck's one of those the bottom level of the roster guys that you're gonna potentially see that could potentially hang on for this roster. I was talking with Ryan Edwards about that. We'll get into that here in a little bit. Guys, go check out that interview. It's on my Twitter account. It was a lot of fun to be able to talk with him. Chris Hernandez jumping in here. Chris, it's been a while since I've seen your name in this in this chat. It's really good to see you back here on Dove Valley Deep Diver, showing some love. Nothing to say, but we appreciate you, Chris. I want to jump into this really quick. We got a couple of questions before we get into the rest of the Broncos roster. K-Hop jumping in here, asking, is Alex Singleton a signing that we are going to regret? This linebacker from Philadelphia, who was the leading tackler for the Philadelphia Eagles, I believe, for the last 2 seasons. A quality special teams player, speaking of that. So K-Hop says, we haven't heard much about him. Is there any info? Eric, what have you heard about Alex Singleton and his role on this Broncos team?
Well, I know that when he was signed, everybody was saying, he's your linebacker help. And from what I understand, he was brought in mostly to help on special teams, to help upgrade that unit that was so bad. And I mean, going to regret it. He signed for not even 1.2 million. It was just below it, 1.1 something.
Yeah.
You're not going to regret that. That's just a drop in the bucket against the salary cap. It's fine. And he's there to help out the special teams unit. I mean, when you're looking at linebacker, Josie Jewell, Jonas Griffith, those are Jonas Griffith. Those are your guys that you're looking at for there. So I don't think that we're going to regret it. And for special teams, you don't hear much about them until preseason games.
I don't disagree with you on that one. I do want to kind of give a shout out to Alex Singleton and his ability to turn and run, though. He can actually play in some coverage. They didn't use him very much like that in Philadelphia, but he still does have that ability. So maybe keep an eye on that situation. Obviously with Baron Browning, that's another aspect of the inside linebacker combination, because you're you're going to see him play that more weak side linebacker, the will linebacker, maybe coming off the edge and stuff like that. So Alex Singleton may actually have a role on this defense. If you're talking about like another guy that can turn and run, have some athleticism, maybe go a little bit more sideline to sideline than Josie Jewell, who is more of a run fit kind of run funnel guy. He puts himself in really good positions. Josie Jewell does, just based on his football IQ. But Alex Singleton is just a better athlete, in my opinion. And I think that we're going to see a little bit more of him on potentially some passing downs where you need that nickel linebacker that can come in and play. But his biggest role is going to be on special teams. Eric, I do agree with you on that one. Another quick question here. We have Travis jumping in here. Want to say hello to Travis Weber, who does a great job supporting every one of the shows here on Mile High Huddle. He's a great friend of mine on Facebook as well. Good evening, Lance, Eric, and Broncos country. Happy Friday. What's up with Quinn Miners? He's been awfully quiet this offseason. Eric, have you heard anything on second-year player Quinn Miners?
He's an offensive lineman during OTAs where there's such limited contact. You don't hear much from offensive linemen here because they're so limited in what they can do. OTAs, mini camps, that's a situation where, those shifty, speedy guys, they get a chance to shine because you can't be as physical as you want to be. And Quinn Miners, he can't be as physical as you want to be. So, of course, it's going to be a little bit quiet. It's why during OTAs and mini camp, you always take anything that involves physicality, defensive line, offensive line. You always take it with a grain of salt when they're getting a lot of praise. And if they're being quiet, we'll wait and see. If he's still quiet through training camp, through a couple padded practices, then maybe something's up there. Maybe he's just doing his job and just doing it well. Not being noteworthy in a good, negative, or positive way. Just doing his job. That could be the case as well. You're muted.
Sorry about that. Phil McLaughlin jumping in here. Nothing to say, just showing some love. And thank you, Phil, for joining us again. This is like 4 or 5 weeks in a row now, Phil. So I'm really glad that you keep coming back to us and enjoying some time here on a Friday with Erick Trickel and myself. How do I want to transition off of this? It's
Andrew
so
Beck.
Andrew Beck. Okay.
I want to come back to Andrew Beck because you had a little nugget.
Okay, so talking with Ryan Edwards earlier today, he actually made a point to mention out that he had been, because we were talking about Greg Dulcich and Alberto Ecuador and the running back battle and stuff like that. And he actually had said that after today's practice, he was out there watching or when it wasn't today's practice, sorry about that, a couple days ago, he was watching Russell Wilson and Andrew Beck working on route running in the red zone, specifically in goal line situation, goal line packages and stuff like that, working on angle routes, arrow routes, just jumping out in the flat and stuff like that. Like they spent a lot of time working together. To me, that, and again to Ryan as well, was saying, that's kind of a noteworthy piece of information that Andrew Beck is a guy that they want to continue to keep working with, specifically Russell Wilson, on how he's lining up, on how he's getting to certain spots in his routes on certain times within the footwork and stuff like that. To me, it's kind of noteworthy because Andrew Beck is actually a fairly decent quality receiver coming out of the backfield. He can line up in the line. He can line up as a fullback. He's a decent blocker. Like there's a lot of hats the guy wears, and he does play on all 4 core special teams units. And you and I can argue back and forth on the quality of play there. But he's still one of those guys that fills out the bottom level of the roster, that fills multiple roles for you, that can still play at a fairly decent level for you. So that was something that I noticed was pretty noteworthy.
Yeah, Eric Tomlinson does it all.
Right.
It's the same thing. And here's the thing with Andrew Beck is he costs $1.2 million against salary cap. And this is a situation where they have to start being really aggressive with how they view the cap. You can't, for bottom of the depth chart guys, you can't carry like super big extensive cap hits. 1.2 million for Andrew Beck. To cut him, you only are then paying 200,000 in dead money. You save $1 million. Eric Tomlinson, who fills the exact same thing, is like 1.4 million against the salary cap this year, where it's costing you $1 million to cut him.
Right.
I don't see a place for Andrew Beck on this. The stuff with Russell Wilson working with that practice, it's noteworthy. Things like that are. How noteworthy? That depends. Was it something that the coaches asked him to do that? Was it something that, hey, he approached Russell Wilson and be like, hey, can you work with me a little bit? Because both those, they tell me 2 different things. Both of them are not necessarily good because both of them tell me if the coaches ask them, they're clearly saying, hey, you need to take some extra time to grow and take these steps. You need the extra work to put in. And if he's doing it, then he's like, okay, I know that I'm not in a good position. I'm going to take the extra time. And it's not the coaches putting him up to it, being like, okay, we want to see what you can do. So it kind of points to that. So it matters. It's noteworthy. How much depends. I just don't see a roster spot for him.
So I want to push back on you just a little bit on this. And the reason why I want to do this is because obviously you've got Okuebanam, you've got Greg Dulcich, and you've got Eric Tomlinson, who's I think that's going to be the guy as the blocking tight end. You've obviously got Melvin Gordon, you've obviously got Javonte Williams, and you're going to get Mike Boone on there as well. Do you see the Broncos keeping a fourth tight end / running back, hybrid, fullback, H-back kind of a guy? And if you do, what's the difference between Andrew Beck and Erick Sobert, who, I mean, I like Erick Sobert. I think that I like the athleticism there, but the blocking isn't as good as Andrew Beck. And the versatility with Beck is more than Sobert. So at least that's my opinion.
I mean,
or you're just going to run with 3 and 3.
I think they keep 4 tight ends, that one of them being that hybrid guy. And the biggest difference is why you go Erick Sobert over Andrew Beck is a few reasons. First of all, Erick Sobert was much better on special teams, significantly better. He's much better on as a blocker as well. I mean, that's not even close. And Erick Sobert, you talk about versatility, but he's not a tight end. He's a fullback listed as a tight end.
That's fair.
Like, he doesn't play as an inline tight end very often because he can't do it. He showed he can't do it. He showed he can't do it in college, which is why he was basically a fullback coming out. And like, I mean, hopefully Andrew Beck is successful. I mean, but he really is. He's just a big fullback that's only played about 120 snaps the last 2 years because of that. Versatility is great if you're actually seeing the field.
Right.
122 snaps over a full season. Your versatility is not such a major contributing factor that it's going to land you on a roster with an all new coaching staff.
That's. I mean, I understand your arguments there. Just based on what I've been hearing. So let's digress on that and kind of move forward here. It's interesting to hear your perspective though, and like I said, I just wanted to bring that kind of information forward a little bit based on what I've been talking with Ryan and talking with Ben and stuff like that earlier today. I guess not Ben, but talking with Ryan specifically earlier today. Just the information that he brought out of Andrew Beck being that guy that they're really kind of focusing on getting work with Russell Wilson. Now, with that, let's move away from the offensive side of the football, because today, guys, we are going to do the exact same thing we did a couple weeks ago. I believe it was right before my wedding. We broke down the offensive roster, the offensive depth chart. And it was a great conversation talking about, some younger rookie players, like trying to figure out exactly how this team's going to kind of shape up. I want to start obviously inside. We're going to work inside, work our way outside. Defensive line in the trenches. That's obviously the very big takeaway here. So Erick actually has sent to me a projected Broncos depth chart. And first things first, obviously you're going to have Ioma Wazirike, a guy that the Broncos just drafted in the 4th round. Deshaun Williams, a player that has been around the Broncos for a little while. But obviously DJ Jones, a guy that the Broncos went out 3 years, I believe $30 million. They signed DJ Jones to this offseason. Obviously you're going to get McTelvin Agim, a guy that's coming in, 2 or 3 years now in the organization. But the one big noticeable name that you don't have making this roster as of right now is big nose tackle Mike Purcell, a guy that I really enjoy watching as a nose tackle, run stuffing defensive tackle. Why do you not have Mike Purcell making the 53-man roster, at least at this early projection?
Well, I mean, it's simple. I mean, versatility. He's just a nose tackle. He's not a guy that's going to move out of that 0-1 technique. His age and its cost. I mean, this is the thing. Is like you're getting ready to pay Russell Wilson 5 years, $250 million. That's like that's the common expectation. May not be, reported, but that's the expectation. And here he is sitting at $4.3 million against the salary cap. Well, you can sit here and you can cut him, and you're saving 3.5. That's an additional $3.5 million that you can have for the cap this year and carry over to next year to help you cover, any potential raise for Russell Wilson.
Yeah.
I mean, he's been replaced. He doesn't have the versatility that you need with the projected Evero defense. It sucks because I'm a huge fan of Purcell and how good he can be. But I mean, he really fell off a cliff last year, and then it just continued to get worse.
Excuse me. I want to kind of elaborate on a point that you just made, and Jody jumping in here as well. And Jody, we've gone back and forth multiple different times on other different conversations. Garrett Bowles specifically being one, but he says Mike Purcell can only play one spot on the defensive line. That zero, that one technique. He's a nose tackle only. The Broncos have a couple of guys here that are up and coming. Obviously, again, we talked about Ayomo Wazirike last week at length there for a minute, but then McTelvin Agim, another player is, I believe, is year 3 now, coming out of Arkansas, a guy that can play literally everywhere from the 0 to the 7 technique. Like, he can play all the way out on the edge if you want him to. Ayomo Wazirike, a guy can play 0 to 5 if you want to. So from head up on the center out to the outside shoulder of the offensive tackle. Like, you've got a couple of guys that you can kind of move around and use as like athletic chess pieces, especially in getting after the passer. And that to me is the big thing here with Mike Purcell, is that he's not a guy that you can move all over the defensive line, and he's not a pass rusher. He really is a 2-gap run defender. He has a quick first step, and he does a really good job penetrating if he's attacking a single gap. But like, he uses his length and his upper body strength so well that it's hard for you to move him off of what he does best. These other 2 young up-and-coming players that are obviously on cheaper deals that you can line up all over the place, they've got some flaws. Don't get me wrong. I think Ayomo Wazirike needs to get more upper body strength. He needs to get and use his length a little bit more. McTelvin Agim has to figure out just how to play NFL football. Mike Purcell,
run.
Yes, and you're absolutely right, against the run. I think that Mike Purcell, as good as he is against the run, there's just not enough multiplicity with his game that you can keep that guy at his cost on this roster, and I agree with you on that.
So one of the big things is the Browns. I mean, having linebackers, I know I joke that linebackers don't matter, but linebackers can help ease the pressure on the defensive line in so many ways. I mean, that's just common football knowledge, basic football knowledge. But against the Cleveland Browns, I mean, they let Mike Purcell penetrate, and they use it against him. He consistently shot the gap, and they just ran to the hole that he vacated.
Mm-hmm.
They use his momentum against him, and you have to have defensive linemen who are able to hold their own a little bit. And when we watched Mike Purcell try to 2-gap last year, I think we saw it a lot more against the Philadelphia Eagles. He was bullied. He was pushed around. He just did not look like the same strong player that he used to be. So it's very concerning. And McTelvin Agim, reason why I wanted to specify the run is last year he was the best, most efficient pass rusher on the Broncos defensive line last year. Granted, it only came very handful of snaps because Vic Fangio hated the fact that he couldn't defend the run. Didn't want to get caught with him out on the field. That's the big thing. It's like, that's why he's got to improve against run, so he can sit there and see the field more. And without Mike Purcell, with the issues that Denver had getting after the quarterback last year, I'm willing to take that shot with him with the issues that he has against the run because of what he offers up as a pass rusher. And hopefully your linebackers help ease that up a little bit. And then you still have DJ Jones, who's sit there and can 2-gap much better than Mike Purcell can.
Yeah.
And really is effective in this type of defense that they want up front. So it's just, in all essence of it, I mean, Mike Purcell has been replaced. It's just a matter of time. And from what I understand, is the only reason why he hasn't been let go so far is because he's still dealing with some injury stuff that's creating some issues with the contract.
That's fair. Jody jumping in here to another quick question from him. Eric, do you see us only playing 2D linemen a lot? And I'm going to kind of jump into Jody's head here and clarify this a little bit. I think what he's talking about is more like even front stuff, 2 down linemen, 2 edge defenders. So something like that, like a 2-eye and a 3 technique, and then a couple of 7 techniques, something like that. Do you see the Broncos kind of moving away from that odd front that with the nose tackle, 2 defensive tackles, and then 2 edge defenders?
Well, I mean, we saw it a lot last year. I mean, Shelby Harris and Jamar Jones were often just the only 2 defensive linemen out there with 2 edges. It's modern NFL. You take out that nose tackle, you spread out your defense a little bit, and add an extra defensive back. I think we will see it a lot. A lot of probably Jones as a 3 tech and Jones as a 4-eye. It leaves you a pretty big gap up the middle, but it's going to put more on the linebackers to sit there and pressure that, and then ease up and the edges off the edge. So I do think we see it a lot.
I think we're going to see a little bit more of some 2-eye technique. I really do like Ayomo Wazirike as a 2-eye technique. For some reason, there's just something that speaks to me there, where him lining up on the inside shoulder of the guard, attacking the A gap, and using that quick first step against the center, where like you saw it so much with him at Iowa State, where he would get up underneath the center's pads just so quick because that center has to obviously snap the ball and then get his hands back up. Awazarike does a great job of getting inside and underneath that first initial punch on the center. I love that fit for him in this defense. I think that might be his best fit. I know that you like him as a 4-eye, but still, like that, man, I really like that. McTelvin Agim, though, with his ability to slide all over. I
can tell you why you don't want him as a 2-eye so much.
Why is that?
He has plays with pad level, and he already gives the offensive lineman natural leverage. You play him as a 4-eye, he doesn't give them that natural leverage as much. He can get away with a higher pad level.
That's a fair point, and I think the biggest problem with that is with the pad level. That's definitely a huge concern. But he doesn't play to his length. He likes to when he stands straight up and then tries to dip back around. He doesn't initiate with a punch like that. That's a big thing that I saw with him when I was doing the film study on him. He doesn't initiate with a punch and extend his arms. He doesn't play to that 35.5-inch length. Like that's a big problem, especially if you're going to play in the A gap. Like you got to use that length. You got to use that upper body strength. So I see where you're coming from with that.
As a 4-eye, he does need to use that length, but he's going to need to use that length a little bit more on the inside as well.
Exactly. Yep.
As a 2-eye, as a 4-eye, you're just allowing him to just burst through and try to shoot the gap and take the inside shoulder. No different from a 2-eye.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I'm definitely right there with you. Like we're speaking the same language, different techniques, but the same kind of concerns go along with that as well. I agree with you. I think that there's multiple rules for Ayoma Awazarike, and I think that there's a great way for him to see the field early. Moving back, actually, let's see. We got a couple of questions here. K-Hop jumping back in here. We're going to talk about some wide receivers really fast. Pivot off the defensive side of the football. Let's say that the Broncos keep 6 wide receivers in Jerry Jeudy, KJ Hamler, Cortland Sutton, Tim Patrick, and Montreal Washington. Who should get that final spot between Kendall Hinton, Tyree Cleveland, or Travis Fulgam?
Well, I know that one, what's his name? Brandon, one of the undrafted free agent receivers. Let me see if I can't find his name real quick.
Yeah, name's escaping me.
Brandon Johnson out of UCF. He's been getting a lot of hype at the bottom of the depth chart, but he seems more poised for the practice squad. That final spot, it depends on what you're looking for. I don't think Travis Fulgham's really up for it. Do you want another slot guy? Because KJ Hamler, Jerry Jeudy, and Montreal Washington, those are guys that can work in the slot. Or do you want a special teams gunner more outside, Tyree Cleveland? I lean Tyree Cleveland for special teams ability, but who knows? It's completely up in the air. I'm not even 100% on the fact that Montreal Washington makes this roster just yet. Not until we see him in preseason, because OTAs and mini camps, I know he was looking nice, but it's a situation where his type of player, they should shine with the limited contact. And then Seth Williams, I think that Seth Williams should also be part of that group.
Honestly, I think Jalen Virgil, the undrafted rookie free agent out of Appalachian State, should be in the conversation there, because he's got punt return ability, a shifty kind of slot guy that you can put out in multiple different facets and use him as a receiver. Because Montreal Washington, as much as I like him, and I can't wait to break him down. That's my project this weekend. I'm doing Montreal Washington film piece for that's going to come up on Monday. So I can't wait to break him down. But Jalen Virgil, just the multiplicity that he has, the ability to stretch the field vertically, the jitterbug stuff that you can do with him, the punt return ability, the kick return ability, that's a guy that you really got to watch out for. Kendall Hinton as well. Let's give a shout out to your boy Kendall Hinton, a guy that is a Hall of Fame quarterback, by the way. Let's pound that table really fast. But there's some shiftiness to him, his ability to get open. He had a big play against the Dallas Cowboys this last year, a 44-yard reception where he kind of took the top off the defense, and it was really cool to see him. Montreal Washington, I don't think is a lock to make this roster. I want to go back and double dive on his tape really fast before I really make a true statement on that, but I don't think that that's the guy to watch out for. I do think Fulgam, though, has a potential opportunity to jump in on this roster, because he's got special teams ability. He was the number 1 wide receiver for the Philadelphia Eagles for about 6 weeks back in 2019. He's got game ability. There's at least something to having another veteran wide receiver that knows how to play all over the formation and has special teams ability. So Fulgam is another guy to kind of keep your eye out for.
So tell me you realize how hilarious it is that, he was a number 1 receiver for 6 weeks 3 years ago.
Oh, I know.
The NFL, what have you done for me now?
I know.
There's a reason why he's bounced around. Basically, he seems like he was a flash in the pan.
I'm not going to disagree with that, but there is something to add to another veteran in the room.
I get what you're saying.
Like
it was just funny that for 6 weeks 3 years ago.
Oh yeah,
that.
I'm speaking to my inner fantasy football fandom, because like that was really the big thing there, was like everyone was jumping on Travis Fulgam to like go and get that guy, and then he just disappeared. It's been a while since we've heard his name, but if you have a guy that has a lot of experience like that playing in the league, has been around for a while, has special teams versatility, and you can actually trust this guy to go out there and work with the veteran quarterback, are you going to go with an unproven player like a Kendall Hinton, who still has a long ways to go as he transitions from the wide receiver, or transitions to the wide receiver position from quarterback? Tyree Cleveland, who has injury concerns, Jalen Virgil, who's an undrafted free agent, and for a reason, because he's not the biggest guy, like he's got a thinner frame. Like there's a reason why Fulgam is a guy that you kind of need to keep your eye on, and that's why, because he at least is a veteran that's been around the block a time or two.
Yeah, but he was with Miami, and Miami even cut him. So one thing that I take note of, and this is at any point of the season, final roster cuts or whatever, doesn't matter when. If a team is weak at a certain position and they cut a player, that's typically not good news about that player.
Right.
Miami was really weak at wide receiver when they let him go. That's noteworthy. That's something that I take note of when it comes to where he's at as a player now.
What was the cost though? I mean, without going through all the
I think it was a minimum deal.
Okay, well then maybe I'm wrong. God damn it. That's never that's par for the course for DVD. Anyways, all right, guys, back to the defensive side of the football. Let's go back into the off-ball linebackers here. This is a fun conversation. We kind of talked about Alex Singleton just a little bit. Josie Jewell in there as well. Baron Browning is another player that we're going to see playing kind of both that hybrid weak side linebacker, rushing off the edge a little bit, playing in some coverage and stuff like that. But a guy that I don't think is getting nearly the amount of love that he definitely deserves is Jonas Griffith. Man, I really was impressed with him going against the Kansas City Chiefs, going against the Las Vegas Raiders, going against the Chargers, like down the stretch, even going against the Bengals. I thought he had a really good game against the Bengals. That's a player that the Broncos are really going to rely on, and apparently he looks really good out at OTAs. Is there anybody on this roster outside of those guys that could potentially like unseat like an Alex Singleton, or like Josie Jewell is going to be around? Like there's no question about that. Is there another player on the Broncos depth chart as of right now that could potentially steal a spot, like Justin Strnad maybe? No. Is there a fifth linebacker you could see?
I don't think they keep 4 linebackers.
Wow. Okay.
I mean, I'm counting Baron Browning as an edge. I mean, he still has the ability to drop back to it. And so I see 3 linebackers: Josie Jewell, Alex Singleton for special teams, and Jonas Griffith, who might be the starter. He's been getting a lot of praise. And one thing with linebackers, I mean, I said not too long ago about taking OTA and mini camp practices with a grain of salt. With linebacker is one position where you can actually get a good idea of how much they're, in the case of Jonas Griffith, how much he's grown as a player with how he's seeing things, how he's reacting, the instincts. Those are things that you can see, even without the physicality aspect of it, which when things do get physical, you want to see if it continues and if he actually improves even more. So you can get a good idea where he's at. And everything is saying that he's impressive. I talked to a few guys who are saying he is very clearly the best linebacker out there of the bunch. Which is high praise for it, because they're talking about how Josie Jewell looks even better than he did the first 4 weeks of last year before he got hurt. A lot of praise for these linebacker rooms. And Jody, he is why AJ Johnson and Kenny Young were not brought back. He's a large reason for it. Yeah. Another reason was AJ Johnson. I mean, outside of their own issues as players, I mean, they didn't have as much versatility as some of these other guys. They were very limited in certain areas as these other guys. So it was just multiple aspects for it, but Jonas Griffith's development is a big reason for it.
Yeah, and another point here from Jody, he had 40 tackles in the last 4 games last season, and you don't get 40 tackles. That's 10 tackles a game, guys. Like that's a lot. You don't get 10 tackles a game by putting yourself in bad positions. And that's something that you saw with Jonas Griffith, was his ability to kind of like read and diagnose and put himself in the right positions to go and make those plays. He's not a see ball, chase ball kind of a linebacker. Like he does a really good job of getting himself around the football, just with his football IQ and his understanding. The athleticism is there as well. Like I really want to see his ability to turn and run in coverage, like really develop this season, because he did a really good job at the end of last season. Like And as Eric said, it wouldn't surprise me to see Jonas Griffith be the best linebacker, the guy that doesn't come off the field, even when the Broncos go dime. Like, you're going to have, obviously, dime packages, 6 defensive backs. You're going to keep one linebacker on the field. Jonas Griffith might actually be that guy over Baron Browning, who everyone's pounding the table like Baron Browning is going to be that off-ball linebacker. No, he's not going to be that guy. Jonas Griffith is the one to really kind of watch out for here.
Yeah, and one thing too is like one thing I look about. I mean, total tackles is great. I like looking at solo tackles, and I mean, most of Jonas Griffith's tackles were solo tackles.
Yeah,
it wasn't a thing of where he was arriving to help somebody finish a tackle. He was getting his tackles himself. Mm-hmm. And with coverage, I mean, I don't think that he is one that you have to pull off the thing, because when he was out there on the field in coverage, he did a great job. And the best part about it is that he limited what happened after the catch. He allowed a lot of catches. I mean, linebackers often do, especially with how he was used. A lot of short, shallow stuff that you got to come up and make the play. And he did. And he kept big plays from happening off of that. Something that was issues with some other linebackers Denver has had over the previous few seasons. So he's a guy that if he grows and he develops, he can be a linebacker that you don't have to take off the field outside of giving him a breather every now and then.
No. No, you're absolutely right on that. And a big thing that goes into it is a great and astute point here. Just the usage of the linebackers, like fall back, keep everything in front of you, and go make a play in open space. And Jonas Griffith does a great job of that. Like, he's a supremely good tackler out in open space. That was something I really liked about him, specifically against the Chargers. Like, I really liked his ability to go out and make plays out in the flats and stuff like that. And also again against the Chiefs last year at the end of the season. So that's something to really keep your eye on. Got a great question here from Trevor Sandell. He says, Lance and Eric, I want to get your guys' opinion or thoughts on the biggest differences you guys have seen in OTAs from quarterbacks of the past, like Locke and Bridgewater, compared to Russ this year. Thanks, guys, and keep up the great work. And thank you, Trevor, for supporting the show. We appreciate you for joining us. Now, I'm going to jump in here, and obviously the biggest takeaway that you have to have, the biggest difference you're going to see is you have that quarterback. You actually have a guy. This isn't a competition. We love, like I said, we love to talk about the quarterback competition, stuff like that. You know who the guy is. He's out there dictating everything from snap to snap, helping to orchestrate this offense, even behind the scenes in the meeting rooms. Like, this is a one-of-one offense, according to Tim Patrick. Like, this has never been installed. This is the first time this offense is going to be installed. Russell Wilson's a big part of that. OTAs last year, even before training camp, there was always, well, Locke did this or Bridgewater did that. Like, there was always that kind of conversation. That's the biggest difference, and I don't think that's debatable.
I mean, for me, it's the leadership aspect of it. I mean, the focus, the offense, they don't have to sit there and worry about, okay, what quarterback do we have in this time, and sit there and the little adjustments that you have to make, because you do have to make little adjustments as a receiver, depending on what quarterback's out there. They don't have to from rep to rep or from series to series anymore for this thing. And so there's a lot more just focus on the improvements and working out the kinks and everything, instead of their own changes they have to make for it. So it's this trickle down effect of being able to help out these other positions before, because you don't have this quarterback battle. And that just seems to be one of them. And then outside of that, the other differences I see is the difference of the coaching staff. Doesn't seem to be as like nose to the ground, like constantly driving for it. Seems to be a little bit more loose, a little bit more relaxed, which just from my point of view with it, typically tends to play out better as the season goes on, having that more relaxed aspect of it, of practices.
I want to jump back onto another point that you had. There is an adjustment for every receiver when you have a quarterback competition like that, where you have Locke throwing the football as compared to Teddy Bridgewater, or as compared to Russell Wilson.
Well, okay, so the biggest one is, real quick, the biggest adjustment is that you have to prepare for Teddy Bridgewater to have the ball get thrown to you about 5 yards deep and be on target, or with Locke where you're 20 yards deep and the ball thrown 15 yards over your head.
Yes, I love it. Thank you for that. However, I like there's a more nuanced part of that I want to get into. Say you're running a quick slant with Teddy Bridgewater, you know the ball is going to be right here, right on your chest plate, on time. You're going to get there. Drew Lock, it might be a little bit like it's going to be faster. It's going to be a lot harder. Like you know the ball is going to be there, but it's coming about 15 miles an hour quicker because Teddy Bridgewater has a weaker arm. Like that. It's just plain and simple. Drew Lock fires the football in there. Teddy Bridgewater doesn't. So that was a big adjustment. Like there's timing aspects to everything. That one half a step where you get your head turned and you get the football put right on your hands. And Gary, thank you for jumping in here. We appreciate you for showing us some love. Nothing to say, but just saying hi. And thank you, Gary, for that. But like one half a step, getting your head turned around might be the difference between you getting hit in the face mask and getting hit in the hands. Like, because you just don't know that. Velocity matters. Timing matters. Everything from footwork to the quarterback, footwork to the wide receiver, like everything changes from quarterback to quarterback, from receiver to receiver. Having that solid quarterback that knows that, like, this is the timing, this is how I'm going to step, so I'm going to throw the ball. You're going to catch this slant route consistently every single time, this exact same way. That is a more nuanced understanding than just it's Teddy Bridgewater versus Drew Lock. Like, those guys throw the ball completely differently. You got one consistent every single time. Every single throw is going to be the exact same way at the exact same time at the exact same spot. You turn your head, you get the ball right here every single time.
Yeah, that's the non-joking answer. So there was actually a comment earlier that I saw that I was kind of curious about. So Netani Moody, he's been getting out a lot of hype. Yes. How much stock are you putting into him possibly being the left guard?
Not much.
Good.
I think that there's some conversations going on behind the scenes, and there's some information getting put out in ways that are not necessarily misleading, but also a little bit misleading. I hope that makes sense. Like there's information getting leaked out here that is to try to drum up a market for somebody. I'm not sure if it's Moody. I'm not sure if it's Dalton Risner. I'm not sure if it's Quinn Miners. I'm not sure if it's Graham Glasgow. One of those four guys is not making this roster. I think it's Moody just because I don't see the athleticism there. But around every corner, you've got a coach of some kind, whether it's Nathaniel Hackett, Justin Alton, George Payton, who's singing the praises, Russell Wilson singing the praises of Netani Moody, of Lloyd Cushingberry even. Somebody's singing the praises of one of those bottom level of the roster guys at the interior offensive line position, and Moody seems to be the guy that continues to get the hype. I think that's the guy you got to watch out for as the potential trade piece. And I'm going to put this out there way early. Obviously, we're like, 3 weeks, a month away from training camp. That's the guy to watch out for. Netani Moody, you don't continue to sing the praises of a guy that doesn't fit your scheme like that without intentions of doing something with him. If he does win the spot, by all means, congratulations to him. Good job, sir. And great for you. I just don't see that. I think he's on his way out the door.
I mean, I'm not necessarily sure that he's on his way out the door. I mean, there's definitely a spot for him. 10 offensive linemen, he can be that 10th guy. Well, really 8th or 9th guy. But I mean, I'm looking at this battle at left guard, and Dalton Risner, from everything I have heard, has been clearly the top guy at left guard. Like, clearly, like that despite how good Netani Moody has looked, there is still a pretty sizable gap between him and Dalton Risner. So this talk of him, maybe he does come through and win it. But I mean, through OTAs and minicamp, I don't see the point of declaring a winner at any camp battle spot, because just what you can do is so limited. Training camp, you get padded practices, you get more on there, you get more hands-on, like there's more to it. So I don't see it. And I think that if anybody's going to take over the left guard spot, I'm looking at Tom Compton for it.
I was just about to ask you that.
Moody.
I was just about to ask you that. Sorry to cut you off. I was just about to ask you that about where Tom Compton comes in.
And I mean, from when he was signed, I mean, the big thing that was going on, and it was reported that he's going to compete at right tackle, but he's going to compete more than that. He's going to compete at both guard spots as well. So, I mean, if anybody takes over at left guard, it's that. I think by the time the season comes, it'll be Dalton Risner. If somebody gets moved around, I wouldn't be surprised if it is Netani Moody. But I could also see him stay. Like, I don't think it's a situation where I don't think that there is no way in this world where not all four of Risner, Miners, Glasgow, and Moody don't make it. Like, we're only 3 of them 4. I think there is a real reality where all 4 of them make it, because with the issues that Denver has had on the offensive line over the years, especially on the interior, having those options is great. Dalton Risner is a free agent after this year. Maybe you can sit there and work on Moody and develop him to be the starter after this year. Graham Glasgow, I think, are keeping to help as, veteran insurance for Quinn Miners, and at the center position with Risner and Miners your starter. So I think there's definitely a way that all 4 of those guys make it.
Yeah, I want to jump into this question here, Eric with the CK, by the way. So
I gotta tip my hat, man. I don't see many other Ericks with the CK out there. Hats off to you. That's the correct and only way to spell Erick.
Yes, I had to grab that specifically because of that. However, he has a great question here. What about moving Lloyd Cushingberry via trade? Scott and I. So after Eric, you had your scare a couple of weeks ago. Scott and I came back and we were talking talking with each other about Lloyd Cushingberry and the potential of him being that trade target, a guy that doesn't make the roster. I want your thoughts on this, and I might have gotten you to this a couple weeks ago, but I want you to kind of rehash this out here. As of right now, there are two players on this roster that have experience playing the center position. One of them is Lloyd Cushingberry. The other is Graham Glasgow, who is coming off of an injury, hasn't seen a whole lot of time in OTAs. It's going to be training camp here soon, so we're going to figure this out. But is Lloyd Cushingberry really an option to trade right now? You got Luke Wattenberg, who has not played the center position in the NFL. A great athlete, fits the scheme well, but there's a lot of issues with him as far as play strength, his footwork, his hand placement, stuff like that. He's also a rookie. Is Cush really a guy that you're looking at to like move it as a trade piece right now?
I mean, it depends. If he goes in and he's much the same as he has been the last 2 years, yeah, I still look at moving him. I still look at trying to recoup some of that value that you have in him. Because after the season, if he doesn't improve, I don't think he can. However, I completely get the point that if he doesn't win the starting job, that you keep him as a backup just because of insurance. But at that point, I mean, I'd rather just sit there and focus on Luke Wattenberg, honestly. And I think it would make more sense for the coaching staff to stick with their guy over Cushingberry.
So let me get this straight. You're saying Cushingberry could be on the way out, Glasgow being the starting center, maybe even Miners.
I doubt Miners at this point.
So Glasgow being the guy that makes sense. His best tape was actually at center in Detroit. Like that's really the best place he played. I liked him at right guard there because he showed some really nifty footwork there as a pass protector. He showed some nifty footwork here in Denver as well as a pass protector. The biggest thing that I saw with him was his ability to it's called a hop. So engage, get kind of drop back, hop, re-engage, and then drive. He does that very well at the right guard position. I like Graham Glasgow there. I don't necessarily know that I want to move him back to that center spot, and then really kind of trust Quinn Miners to be that right guard all the time. Like you got to have a couple of different guys here.
Well, that opens
and Netani Moody is the big question here. Like where does he fit in here? Like he can play the right or the left side, but he's not a scheme fit. So I think Lloyd Cushingberry, despite the limitations he has as far as his play strength and pass protection, I think this offensive scheme is in the running game fits him very well. He's a fairly decent athlete. He moves pretty well. You don't want a guy lining. Yeah, I think he moves pretty well.
Oh, his lateral agility is absolutely crap.
Forward stuff. His ability to move forward and get to the next level and go and attack somebody. I think that would actually fit with him. His lateral agility there's definitely a problem there. I can see that.
Which in the heavy outside zone scheme, you got to have that lateral agility. But I just want real quick. I want to be clear. I think Cushingberry is the starter come season time. I want to be very clear with that. He is the guy. I said it a couple weeks ago when we talked about it. I think Cushingberry is the starter at it. It's just a situation of if he doesn't show this tremendous improvement at center position and Glasgow wins it, then at that point I'd be like, all right, go on. We're just going to focus on Luke Wattenberg, and the financial aspect does play a part into it as well.
Right. Eric jumping back in here. Eric Weber, that is. Mile high salute to Broncos country. And yes, on the correct version of Eric with a CK. We have to throw that in there every single time. All right. Only got a couple minutes left. I want to jump back to this defensive depth chart. Let's talk about cornerbacks in the secondary here. We haven't quite gotten there yet. There's been widespread reports here lately, guys, about a guy that I talked about as a potential player that could lose his job to up-and-coming rookies like a Faion Hicks or even like an Essang Bassi, Damari Mathis as well. Michael Ojemudia, guys. Like, this kid has been absolutely spectacular. Out there with Pat Surtain, out there with Ronald Darby. It doesn't necessarily matter. Michael Ojemudia out on the boundary. They've even slid him inside to in some nickel situations as well. He is on a mission, man. And that after that last game, and we all know he had I think it was like 11 tackles against Kansas City, 3 passes broken up. He's come back from that nagging hamstring injury, and he looks so good. Is there any way that he is not the 4th cornerback, let alone the 5th, like that bottom level roster guy? Is he the 4th cornerback, a guy that could potentially see the field for this defense as a rotational player, like throughout the game, not just a special teams guy? Like there's an opportunity for him to play as a rotational boundary defender.
Well, I always thought you were smoking something whenever you started talking about Moody losing his job. I mean, he's always been poised to make this roster. It's just a matter of where. But everything seems, I mean, he had a couple rough reps against Cortland Sutton with Russell Wilson where he got beat by some great throws. Like, it hasn't been all sunshine and rainbows for Moody, but he's been looking really good. And he seems set to be the number 4 corner with Damari Mathis as the number 5.
Yeah. The big reason why I was always questioning about Ojemudia is you're talking regime change. You brought in K'Wan Williams. You've got Ronald Darby. You bring in Damari Mathis as well. A lower level of the roster guy that could potentially slide inside and play that slot defender. Another guy like an Eseng Bassi, a Fayon Hicks as well. Yes, I'm not disagreeing with you on that one, but it's something that we haven't seen from Michael Ojemudia. He is a lengthy boundary cornerback that tackles really well. Baseline,
which is what Denver still needed. I mean, they didn't need somebody just on the inside because even before that, they had plenty of options for the slot. It was they were lacking that great one until they brought in Quan Williams.
Right,
they were lacking depth on the outside, and I mean, even going back to the rookie year where it was a scheme where the coverage scheme was more similar to what Denver expected to be running this year than what they did last year. Ojemudia played really good football for the most part as a rookie. There was a couple plays that he had a bad time at against Pittsburgh. There was the bad Atlanta Falcons game.
Yep.
But he had some really good reps. He showed his ability on the outside. So, yeah, I was always baffled whenever he started talking about him potentially losing his job because he seemed very clear to me as that number 3, number 4 boundary corner option.
That was the sticking point with me, though. It was the boundary only because he doesn't play very well in the slot. And now that he's shown the ability to do that, Ronald Darby, at least with all the health concerns and stuff like that, he still has the ability to slide back down inside of the nickel and play very well with those fluid hips that he has and turn and run ability. Michael Ojemudia is just a straight up boundary cornerback. He doesn't play inside.
You still need those.
Yes, I understand that. But when you have you have Pat Surtain, who's obviously a starter. He's going to be a top 5 cornerback in the league this year, by the way. That's not a hot take. That's actual fact. You have Ronald Darby, who plays on the boundary. You have Damari Mathis, another guy that plays on the boundary specifically. You got now Michael Ojemudia. That's a 4th boundary cornerback. Where's the depth in the slot? Like that's like Damari Mathis.
Do you know? Okay. Do you know who the leading slot corner was for the Rams last year?
Was it Jalen Ramsey? I swear to
God. It was Jalen Ramsey. So, I mean, just because we saw Patrick Surtain be out there on the edge so much last year,
right?
I mean, he can play in the slot. It's going to depend on matchups.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And then you look at the fact that you have Ronald Darby and his injury history, and then you're talking about not wanting to keep a boundary-only corner. You're not moving Ronald Darby to the slot often. I mean, in the situations where you have to have somebody in the slot, you don't have to move Michael Ojemudia because you have a guy who can be that boundary-only option. That you can do that. You have Damari Mathis who can play the slot as well, and play the boundary. So again, it was this thing of I don't get why you were so hold up on the fact that he was a boundary only corner when you still need that. I mean, cornerback is one position where you don't have to have extreme versatility to play multiple spots in the secondary. You can be a boundary only corner, and you can get away with that in the NFL still in the modern age. The more you can do, obviously, the better. But I mean, when you look at the other guys that were competing for his spot, I mean, it's a who's who of garbage, really. Asang Bassi, he's a slot only corner, but you thought but you had him competing for Ojemudia for that potential spot. So why was that a holdup for you that Ojemudia was a slot only option, but then you mentioned Bassi as an option to beat him out when he's a slot only option and he's a terrible one?
I guess it's the multiplicity. The multiplicity of it, the ability to the versatility. Like, you know me, that's one of the big things I look at, especially with my secondary players. How many different positions can you play? Bassi is probably a guy that doesn't necessarily fit on the outside, but he can play the slot. You need to have that depth player that can play in the slot. Moody, you've got a handful of guys that can play on the outside, even with K'Wan Williams, who plays pretty well on the outside as well. Like, you got some guys that can play on the outside. I want another slot guy, another primarily slot guy. And to me, that I would take the primary slot guy of a Sangbasi over the primary boundary guy of a Michael Ojemudia until we got into this, the more information of stuff like that.
So you take a penny over a $10 bill?
I don't know that Michael Ojemudia is a $10 bill. He might be $1, but he's $1 on the outside. You
still take $1? Okay, you still take a penny over $1 because the Sangbasi's a penny. Yeah, at least Michael Ojemudia is bringing you a good gunner on special teams as well. Sangbasi offers nothing.
That's the best point you made. That's the best point.
Everything I made was a good point.
Oh, you make lots of good points, but that's the best point you made. I'm not going to back down on this one. I like Michael Ojemudia. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying he's a bad player. I'll never say that about anybody in the NFL. But at the same time, like, there's some limitations and what you have within the roster itself, the roster construction that I like. I want to have some more versatility. And Sangbasi, yes, he's a bad special teams player, and you have me on that one. You can't disagree with that. Regardless, you have to have some depth in the slot. You have to in today's NFL. Unless you're going to bring it, like, you also have Kareem Jackson, and I will slam the table for Kareem Jackson playing the slot cornerback. I love that. I love it there. But Michael Ojemudia,
having more options for the slot. Well, look, you have Caden Stearns, you have Kareem Jackson, you have safeties. You can move Ronald Darby, you can move Patrick Surtain, you have Quan Williams. So again, the boundary option, who's the better player, not taking away special teams, because like that's the focus here is on defense. It still doesn't make sense to go with the slot only option when you have more options for the slot than the boundary guy when you don't have more options for the boundary.
Yeah. It was you got me. You got me backed into a corner here, and you make a lot of astute points. I think that I have a fairly decent point in this conversation, though, where you
I get what you're saying. Depth at nickel is great. Like depth in the slot.
That's the biggest thing.
You do need to have it. But it's just a matter of fact that you have a lot more options to fill out the depth of the safety position than you do the boundary corner.
Right. And that's a fair point. It was always more of a conversation of, you saw Michael Ojemudia struggle, then he had the injury, and he had another injury riddle season. We're coming back into year 3 right now. Like, he's got a long ways to go to develop. And apparently he has taken that next step. And I'm so proud of Michael Ojemudia, and I want to see him succeed. There was just that question of, you've got 4 guys that can play on the boundary. You need another guy that can play in the slot. Ojemudia doesn't project as that. Unless you're playing him as like a super off the ball, like safety driving down, because he's not a turn and run guy. He doesn't have the quick twitch athleticism that you want. That was the biggest thing. At least the Sangbasi, he might be slow, but at least he has a quick twitch ability to turn and run. Ojemudia doesn't have that.
But it doesn't matter, because by the time he does it, I mean, what game was it? I mean, there was one game where the team just constantly beat a Sangbasi with quick slant.
It was Atlanta. And Michael Ojemudia got destroyed in that game too.
Well, yeah, he did. But the thing is like, you're talking about what you want from a slot receiver, and that's not a Sangbasi.
It's still a fun conversation, and I'm glad that we actually got to yell at each other a little bit and have some points and counterpoints. Andrew Baker jumping in here. What's up, fam and Valley boys? What's up, Andrew? How we doing? A lot of optimism all around, but where are our concerns other than right tackle and all the Newsomes? # Mile High Huddle for life.
Apparently, Andrew, depth at slot corner for Lance.
Yes, I do actually have that concern. Depth at slot corner is one. Tight end is the other one. Like, tight end is a concern to me. I at the beginning of the show, I plugged this. Andrew, go and check it out. I did an interview with Ryan Edwards on Broncos Country Tonight earlier today. It's on my Twitter account. I also posted it on my Facebook. If you're friends with me on Facebook, go check that out. Tight end is a problem. You've got Alberto, who has had the injury concerns. He hasn't developed quite the way that you want him to. Greg Dulcich is a new guy. I like him a lot. I think that he can win the starter position at the tight end position. And then you got Erick Tomlinson, who is limited as like a blocker kind of only. Not like, that's rough to say, but he's not the greatest pass catcher. He has like 5 career receptions. That's a problem to me. Like, the tight end position is a concern. It's not a major concern because Russell Wilson doesn't necessarily use the tight end position like that. But I think in this offense where you're going to get a lot of the crossing routes coming off the backside of the boot action or drag routes or stretching the seam vertically, I think that you do need to have that tight end that has the ability to do that. Dulcich and Alberto do have that ability. So I think it's going to be okay. But I miss Noah Fant. I will say that.
Ooh. Ew.
I'll say that loud and proud. I miss Noah Fant.
Only thing I'll push back on there. I don't disagree. Tight end is a little bit of a concern for me. Only thing I'll push back on when you talk about Eric Tomlinson, just because somebody hasn't been asked to do it doesn't mean they can't do it. When Eric Tomlinson has been asked to be a receiver, he's fine. He's just not this great athlete that you look to manufacture catches for.
Right.
He's that
Erick
safety.
Sobert. Yeah, Erick Sobert's the same way. Not a great athlete you manufacture catches for, but when he does have the opportunity to do it, he does a very good job. I was impressed with Erick Sobert last year.
Yeah. And I mean, Eric Tomlinson, I mean, he was very much brought in to be the blocking tight end. So I'm not disagreeing with there. It was just kind of pushing back on that center position. I'm not expecting it from Lloyd Cushingberry. I'm not. We saw him barely improve last year in a scheme that last year was so muddied of a scheme. And when he was asked to do what Denver's going to be doing a lot more this year, he was far worse. His pass protection has been bad going back to his senior year in college, and he hasn't shown technical improvements there. And then your option is Graham Glasgow, who I'm with you. I'd actually rather keep him as a right guard, as a depth piece there, and Luke Wattenberg. Like, it's one reason why I wanted Denver to go out and get an actual a center earlier than they did. Granted, guys they're looking at didn't fall to where they wanted them, but
right.
It's center position. Like, I think that I'm more concerned about center than I am right tackle.
I am as well. I'm right there with you on that one. I think Billy Turner can step in and play a very good right tackle spot. I think Tom Compton can play a very competent right tackle spot, especially in this scheme. He showed the ability to do it in San Francisco last year. So I think right tackle is actually a position we don't necessarily need to focus on. It's going to be a conversation for sure.
Right tackle is a concern beyond this year.
Yes, 100%. 100% with you on that one. All right, guys, we are now at an hour and 6 minutes. That last 10 minutes of this conversation went wildly crazy and super fast. We're going to have to get out of here, though. I want to quickly, though, safety position is pretty well locked up. You've got Justin Simmons, you've got Kareem Jackson, you've got Caden Stearns. The fourth guy, is it Jamar Johnson? Is it Delarian Turner-Yell? Is it PJ Locke, Eric?
I think it's PJ Locke and Delarian Turner-Yell.
I don't disagree with you on that one. I think
Jamar Johnson, his inability on special teams is what's going to kiss him his butt goodbye from the roster.
I think he's going to get cut and released entirely. I don't think he even makes the practice squad. I think he's just done. I really do. I think, and I love Jamar Johnson. Eric, I know you love Jamar Johnson as well. His ability to play that single high role. He could play single high. He could play really well in two high role as well. Very rangy. That guy always lacked physicality. And at the NFL level, you have to have physicality, and he just has not shown it. At least PJ Locke, who came at you, Eric. I know I've seen the text messages. I've saw the direct messages of PJ Locke coming at you after your I don't think he's going to make the roster. I'm rooting for him, too. I'm right there.
I hope he continues to prove my initial opinion on him wrong. All the more power to you, dude.
Yep. It was actually pretty funny. And the message went something along the lines of, I saw your review of me. I saw your opinions of me. And I used that as motivation to help get me to the roster. It was late. Was that not last year or the year before?
It was last year.
It was last year. Okay.
It was just after the 53-man roster was announced.
Oh, that's right. Okay. He came back and he's like, you know what? I saw your opinions on me and I used that as motivation to help get me where I'm at. And thank you for everything you've done for me. Erick Trickel was the guy that helped make PJ
And then he blocked me.
And then he did block him too.
He dunked on me, then he blocked me.
All right. With that, guys, we're going to have to get out of here. Thank you all so much for joining us on Dove Valley Deep Divers. We didn't get a chance to say hello to everybody in the chat. We'll get back to everybody next week and try to get a little bit more creative with incorporating chat and stuff like that. But you guys can find us on Twitter by following me at Sanderson MHH, for Eric at Erick Trickel, also for Scott at Scout Kennedy. Guys, at Mile High Huddle, while you're at it, that's the mother account where you guys can find breaking news and analysis regarding your Denver Broncos, including film breakdowns like my Greg Dulce's piece that dropped on Monday. I've got, like I said, Montreal Washington coming over this the course of the weekend. You've got all of the roster breakdown. Erick's doing a literally player by player breakdown, how they fit with everybody on the roster, starting from 99. Where are you at now, Erick? I think the last one I saw was Miners, actually.
I'm coming up tomorrow. Will be number 75, Quinn Bailey.
So Quinn Bailey, yep. I was going to say Quinn Miners was the last one I saw. So make sure you guys check that out. Check out his roster breakdown, what he thinks about each and every player on this Broncos 90-man roster going into training camp, how they incorporate themselves, and if they have a chance to make a roster spot going into this 2022 season. Folks, if you guys are financially able to do so, it's great to have super chats. It's great to have stars and stuff like that. HuddleUpPod.com. That's where you guys can get some merchandise. There's brand new hats, brand new t-shirts, onesies for your babies. There's teddy bears, like anything to suit your fancy. HuddleUpPod.com is a great way to help support the show and stuff like that. Wish we had DVD stuff. I'm gonna have to get after chat on that because DVD stuff made a random disappearance. I'm not necessarily appreciative of that, but regardless. Facebook supporters, facebook.com/MileHighHuddlePod. Go over there and ingratiate yourself with everybody in the Mile High Huddle community. It's a great way to join yourselves in the conversation. We really appreciate all of your guys' insights and input and stuff like that. It's a lot of fun to have some conversations with you guys on Facebook and stuff like that. And guys, if you're not willing to do anything like that, Facebook, whatever, not willing to go super chat, superstars, huddleuppod.com, anything like that, doesn't matter. 3 things: subscribe wherever you guys are watching this: YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, Apple Podcasts. Any way you guys can subscribe to Mile High Huddle, please do so. It helps us a lot. Like every video that you guys see as well, because that helps us incredibly. And if you love it, share it, because without your guys' support, getting as many views on this stuff as possible, we couldn't do what we do best, which is cover your Denver Broncos. Now, with that, Erick, before we get out of here, man, been really fun to go back and forth with you. We had a pretty good argument there. Any last words before we get out here today?
Just enjoy your guys' weekend. Hopefully it's a nice weekend where you're at. It was absolutely beautiful here. Now it's kind of turning crummy. Enjoy your weekends and get excited. I mean, we're not that far away. Every day we get closer to the regular season.
That's very true. It's like 98 days, I think is what it is. But however, it's 2 days until Father's Day, guys. Happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there. Happy Father's Day to you, Erick. Happy Father's Day to you, Scott. Everybody else, Chad, Carl, not Nick, because Nick sucks and he's not a father yet, but we'll get out of that.
He's got his fur children.
Yeah, he does have fur babies. Queso and Summit. But happy Father's Day to everybody out there in Broncos country. Again, we love and appreciate all of your guys' support. Have a great weekend. Stay safe and take care. We'll see you guys same time, same place next week. And as always, go Broncos and go Avs. Go Avs, go.